Today I'm going to be talking about a few things that have happened in the camera world over the past few months, as well as a few things that I'm going to be adding to my channel. Sony have been on the warpath over the last couple of months and have released a few really good cameras. Canon have this kind of doom and gloom prediction that they're continuing, and also I've got a few things that are happening on my channel. About a month ago, Sony said they were going to release a new camera, and they had a release date, but they didn't say what camera this was going to be. Now, I thought it was going to be the Sony A7000 or maybe an RX100 Mark V, but I was really wrong, and they actually released the Sony A7r Mark IV, which was a massive surprise to everyone. It does seem a little strange how they brought out the A7r Mark IV before they've released the A7s Mark III. Now, I think they're having problems in controlling the heat or fitting in all of the things that they want to in the A7s III. And I know there will be a lot of you that are disappointed that it is the A7r Mark IV as opposed to the A7s III. I was really looking forward to the A7s III coming out, and I was as surprised as everyone else when it was the A7r Mark IV. As for the A7r Mark IV, it does have a lot of new features in it, and it does look quite an interesting camera. It has a new sensor and a new body, so the ergonomics have changed a little. It's a bit more beefy, especially on the grip compared to the A7R III. It now has two USB 2 slots, it shoots 10 frames a second, and the buffer will fit 68 frames. With that huge 61 megapixel sensor, when you shoot in crop mode, you'll get a decent 26 megapixels. So it's almost as if you've got a crop sensored camera built into this camera. This is great because you'll get that extra reach, and say if you're shooting sports or nature photography, you can really get extra reach with the same lenses. But in saying that, you could also shoot just a 61 megapixel image and really crop in on it. It also has real-time eye tracking, even with video. So this means auto eye focus with video, which is hopefully going to be a really good feature for any of you videographers out there. They've also developed the pixel shift technology. So if you do use this for your static landscapes, you'll now be able to get 240 megapixel images, which are mind-blowingly big. With the newly designed body, they've got much better weather sealing than the Mark III, and they've also redesigned the shutter, so hopefully there'll be less shutter problems than seen in the A7 III. It has 15 stops of dynamic range, so this is a small improvement on the A7 III, but the one thing that they really haven't developed is the LCD display on the back. It's still pretty rubbish, and it'll still be hard to get focus, especially when you're using manual focus lenses. With the new design of the body, they've moved the buttons around a little bit. It will look familiar if you've used the Sony system already, but they've upgraded the joystick and it looks a little bit better. With the dials on the right hand shoulder, they keep using these lock buttons for the program mode, and now they've also added one to the exposure compensation dial. I've heard that this is a toggle lock on and off. I'm hoping this is the case, because I really don't like the button on the mode dial. This is where you have to press the button to turn the dial. I much prefer the Panasonic button where it is a toggle button, where you can press it to lock it, but then you'll click it and it'll be unlocked, and then you can turn the mode dial to what you want. This means you can either have the mode dial locked or unlocked. You don't have to press the button every time you change the mode. So I'm hoping these are toggle buttons, because this would be a deal breaker for me. Now, with the resolution at 61 megapixels, these images are huge. This is great if you want a lot of detail, or if you want to crop into your images, or you want to blow them up to massive poster size images. But if you have a slightly slower computer, it'll really slow it down. I have the A7R II, and this already slows my system down, especially when I've got thousands of images to go through. So with those extra 19 megapixels, this is going to slow it down even more. Now, I do have a workaround in using SSD hard drives, but it'll still slow it down. So it'll be interesting to see how the speed of the computer is affected with these much bigger files. But if you have an older computer, it'd be worth downloading some sample images to see how your computer copes with these images. Now, this camera is going to retail for around about $3,498. It'll be available in mid-September, And the one really good thing with this is it's going to knock down the price of the A7R III. This is bad news if you already own that and you want to sell it to buy a new one, but if you're in the market for this high megapixel camera, it's great because it'll make the A7R III available to a lot more people. I think one of the reasons why Sony have released this camera is that they've been listening to the rumors about Canon releasing a much higher megapixel EOS R camera. And I really hope Canon do this because it'll be great to see a viable competitor to the Sony line. Another camera that Sony have released is the RX100 Mark 7. Now this looks like a really interesting camera and they're marketing it as almost a baby A9. This now has an audio jack but no hot shoe. It has a new 1-inch sensor. It has the 24 to 200mm full frame equivalent lens, like on the Mark 6. It shoots 20 frames a second with blackout free shooting, so no flickering on the monitor or pop-up EVF between shots. It has real-time tracking in stills and video, and the 4K shooting has no time limit. Like most of the other RX100 cameras, at the time of release, this is around about $1,200. So they're keeping with that same price point. Now with a flip-up screen and the addition of the audio jack, I think they're aiming this camera at vloggers. It's a nice pocket-sized camera that you can take pretty much anywhere with you. It's got a good megapixel count and also it shoots 4K unlimited. So they really are aiming this at the YouTube market. Another place where I think this would be great is for when you're shooting in a location where someone sees your big camera and thinks it's a professional camera, especially security guards. I've been moved on a few times where I've been shooting with the A7 III entry-level camera and the security guard has thought I was a professional shooter. I was just taking pictures of my wife on a skateboard where that should be no problem at all. So I think the RX100 would be perfect for this. It looks like a little pocket camera, but it packs a punch. I do own the RX100 Mark II, and I've had a lot of use out of it, but it's getting really old, and also there's a few features that I don't like in it. So it might be time for me to upgrade this to the Mark 7. Now moving on to Canon, they seem to be releasing sales figures and doom and gloom predictions in the camera world. Their entry-level DSLR range seems to be bombing, and they seem to be blaming everyone else but themselves. Now I've heard them talk about the DSLR entry-level market contraction and camera phones, but nothing to do with their late entry into the full-frame mirrorless market. Maybe if they took ownership of their decisions, they'd be able to start making a real impact into the full-frame mirrorless camera world. But unless they do that, and unless they release a really good competitive camera, I don't think they'll do that well. I wish they would do this because Sony really does need a viable competitor. They don't really have one yet. Now onto my channel. Over the past few months, I've been sent a few different products to review, from camera filters to action camera gimbals. I'll only review products here that I use a lot. I do a lot of mountain biking and snowboarding, so I'm really into the action camera world, and also with photography and videography. So you may see a few different product reviews. I'll try and make them as fair and as unbiased as possible, so then you can make informed decisions and you can spend your money wisely. As well as this, I've got a lot more tutorials coming up through the year and into 2020. So I have massive lists. You guys have been sending me lots of ideas for new videos, so thanks so much for that. Lots of those will be coming up over the next few months. Also, for those of you who've signed up for my weekly email, I've been a little bit rubbish with this. So I'm going to set myself a schedule for the coming months and I'm going to get it out weekly, every single Sunday. And that's about it. It is really exciting with all of these new camera releases. I'm hoping that the A7S III will come out soon, and I'm hoping that Canon will really step up to the mark, but only time will tell. As always, if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. And for weekly tutorials, hints and tips in photography and videography, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you next time.